Hare Krishna. I'm very happy to see you all. And today we have a very good verse from, actually all the verses are good, from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. But this is the second chapter, which is especially important in understanding the basics of our philosophy. So it's text 30, second chapter. Dehi nityam avadhyo yam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmad sarvani bhutani na tvam shuchitum arhasi. Dehi, the owner of the material body. Nityam, eternally. Avadhya, cannot be killed. I am this soul. Dehe, in the body. Sarvasya, of everyone. Bharata, a descendant of Bharata. Tasmad, therefore. Sarvani, all. Bhutani, living entities that are born. Na, never. Tvam, you. Suchitum, to lament. Arhasi, deserve. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhakti-yoga Swami Shiva Prabhupada. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. One more time. O descendant of Bharata. Yeah, we can repeat it. Yeah. He who dwells in the body. He who dwells in the body. Dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you need not grieve for any living being. Any living being. Purport. The Lord now concludes the chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, Lord Krishna establishes that the soul is immortal and the body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna, as a Kshatriya, should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher, Bhishma and Drona, will die in the battle. On the authority of Shri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body. Not that there is no such thing as a soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity, resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war, it is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. That need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain, therefore you need not grieve for any living being. Om Gyanti Mirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Mritam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sapitamina Bhutali Swayam Rupa Karamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatrubhescha Kripasanopyavacha Pititanam Pavani Shnuyevya Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So this verse and the purport talk about actually very important topic, and that is the topic of violence. And we can see that in different religious systems, sometimes violence has been justified in different ways, and all of them are, of course, of a superior purpose. And a question may be asked, so what's the difference between those religious systems and Srimad Bhagavad-Gita? Basically, if we look at this verse from the external perspective, Krishna says that, O descendant of Bharata, because the soul cannot be slain and the body is destined to be killed, so it's better to kill it now, right? So that's, if we put it into a nutshell. But what Srila Prabhupada says in the purport is, though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war is not discouraged when there is actual need for it. So Bhagavad Gita's approach is violence has its place in the society when there is actual need for it. And this actual need has nothing to do with a particular religious purpose. Means it's not, religious wars for the sake of conversion aren't the thing which you can meet in the Bhagavad-Gita. So Bhagavad-Gita does not encourage us to wage religious wars for the sake of conversion or any other such purposes. But in this case we see that Arjuna didn't have any other choice than to fight with his relatives and friends. And so that's the difference. So Bhagavad Gita doesn't say a single word about conversion or about, yes, it does say about righteous people, about those people who don't believe in the Vedic principles, but it doesn't ever say that we should, violence is not encouraged, not in this field. Violence has its place, and violence has to take place when there is no other way to solve a problem. Then violence is encouraged. And this verse is one of those verses of the second chapter which describe the nature of the soul. And one may wonder why we put so much emphasis on Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Why Srila Prabhupada put so much emphasis on the nature of the soul, on the difference between the body and the soul. Why he preached so much about this and not about some higher truths. And in reply to that, we can quote a mundane example. If we take any field of activities, let's say business, someone has a shop and he trades. So if we ask themselves a question, what's the most important in the business? Okay, any businessman here? So what's the most important thing in any business? Any common element?
Earn money.
Okay, earn money. And as far as the process, so what's the most important element of the business?
Gain your knowledge.
Huh? Oh, you can't hear. Okay. So what's the most important element of any business, in any business?
Should have knowledge.
Money.
Okay, money, knowledge, okay. So how to summarize this? Hare Krishna Prabhuji. How to summarize this? So we can, just to save our time, we can refer to Srila Prabhupada's quote that doing business means to be attentive. So, and attention implies that we are attentive to all the basic parts of our business, which are cash counter and other things, our employees. So basically, any business is as good as its basics. So, and in any professional field, let's say I'm a musician, so I can tell you from my experience that basics of my craft are the most important thing, because all the advanced things I can do, or anyone can do in this field, are the sum and substance of basics put together. So same thing applies to the spiritual science. Our ability to understand the spiritual science is as good as the basics. As let's put it this way: to the proportion we have mastered the basics of the spiritual science. So the more we really understand that we are spirit soul, different from the material body, the more we can see. There's a term to be used is tattvadarshi. So we all know this verse from Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Tadvidhi pranipatina pariprashnina sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshanaha. So according to this verse, there are two types of persons who can impart the transcendental knowledge. Those are jnani, those who have deep knowledge of the Vedic Shastras and understanding of their imports. And those who are tattvadarshi. Tattvadarshi are perfect devotees who have a complete realization of Parabrahman or Krishna. So how did we get there? Okay, so in order to make it from the level of Gyan to the level of Vigyan, we have to get a deep understanding of the basics of the spiritual science. If we want to, if we ever hope for some spiritual insight, then we have to realize, we have to first learn how to see the spirit soul and how to see the paramount importance of spirit soul. And if you take the world around us, everyone aspires for a thing which is called universal truth. Universal truth means some truth which applies to everyone. So some, let's say, set of rules or laws which applies to everyone and everything. And if I know this set of rules and laws, then I am safe in any situation. And on the mundane level, this takes the shape of the modern science. And what the modern science teaches us, let's say, once there was an apple tree, and there was a great scientist, Mr. Newton, sitting under that tree, right? That was Newton. I'm not mixing. And an apple, I'm talking about apple fruit, right? Not Apple computer, something like this. So fell from the tree and hit Mr. Newton on the head. And what did Mr. Newton do with this? No, when the apple hit him on the head. So what was the result of this? Yeah, gravity law. He basically, yeah. Mr. Newton started thinking, okay, this is a heavy apple, so must be something responsible for its weight, and also the fact that it hit me on the head means that there should be some force, some power, which made the apple to hit me on the head. So, and it's actually a good idea. I mean, the idea appears to be good. So the world around us is very difficult, so complex. But what we can do, we can basically boil everything down to the all the scientists of all the departments of knowledge to the simple laws of physics and mathematics. So that was an idea, and Mr. Newton introduced his law of gravity, which he basically just, which was called by his name, but he wasn't the one who created it. And here lies the problem with the modern science. If we take the same example, someone sitting under a tree and an apple hits him on the head, so then let's say it wouldn't be Mr. Newton but someone else, the one who was supposed to, let's say, create statistics. Like there's a science which is called statistics. So the apple hits him on the head and he starts thinking, why has it happened, and what would the possibility of this event? Okay, and he would count the apples, and he would ascertain which apples were ripe and stuff like this. So he would come up with another set of rules, with another law, and let's say if someone else would sit under the apple tree with some other professional, so then it would lead to a different discovery, and let's say if that was in Japan and some Japanese poet would sit under that apple tree and the apples hits him on the head, so then he would compose a haiku, it's a poem about this. But the main element in all these cases, in case of Mr. Newton and other imaginary ones, is it's all about perception. And the perception is only possible when there is a living force, when there is consciousness. And that's actually the problem with the modern science. They're trying to explain everything basically by the law of physics, and they're saying that everything came into being just by accident, and it's governed by a self-governed laws, and only God knows how they work. But still, in this universe there is no God, there is no creator, which implies in brackets that we can be the creators and basically the owners of this universe themselves. We can be gods themselves. But if we make that simple experiment with apple and apple tree, then we will see that there is one thing which is not within the purview, within the power of the law of gravity, and that is the free will, the living entity's free will. Like if let's say if a Mr. Bach, the great composer, would sit under that apple tree and apple hits him overhead, he would probably compose another good piece of music, right? So Mr. Bach believed in God. He was an organ player in their church, and so on and so forth. So main element in all these discoveries and all these happenings is the living entity's free will. And in case of Arjuna, we also see that he wasn't willing to fight, but Krishna wanted to induce him to fight. So if we just go on with a logic like this, then we'll be able to understand that in this universe there are two main forces, and those are dull matter. Matter is dead in itself, and it's not capable for self-organization, and living force. And the scientists want to prove that such a complex and organized structure as this entire universe came into being by accident. But we can see that if we make a simple experiment, if we leave a piece of matter, let's say if we leave, God forbid, this building without any care, if that building will be deserted, then in a year from now, maybe even earlier, this building will just, will be just a mess. And So in the absence of living force, the only thing which matter can do is basically rot, being destroyed. And again, this destruction, any transformation of matter has been done by a living force. So whenever we go in any department of knowledge, we will see those two forces, the living force and the dead matter. Let's say scientists claim they have already made life in the laboratories, and there are other scientists who claim that no, it's a lie. What they did, they put some chemicals together, and they say that the resulted chemical resembled the amino acids which are required for creating life on Earth. Some of them were generated in this way. But okay, even if you take all the chemical ingredients, we all have this experience. If someone dies, his body with all the chemicals, it lies right there. But why can't we just rearrange those chemicals? Like people recycle plastic. Why can't they recycle dead bodies? Why can't we put the dead body in a machine and just, okay, another human comes out, or why only human, animal, whoever. So it's just not possible, because when some unseen element leaves our body, which is consciousness, which is the living soul, then the body is just a bunch of chemicals. So it's very important to realize this, and some people say, okay, so I read about this, I heard about this, so why don't we go further in our life? I already understand that I am spirit soul, different from the body, and then something happens, like he kicks a stone and immediately goes like, oh, pain, or something happens to people, pick a quarrel, and when they quarrel, they completely forget then that they are actually spirit souls, and they have nothing to do with this material world. So it's something. This knowledge has to be heard about time and again, and the more we hear about this, the deeper is our understanding of it. So, and here is a very interesting passage. On the authority of Shri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from the material body, not that there is no such a thing as soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity, resulting from the interaction of chemicals. So there are two theories by the modern science, and first of them is there is no such a thing as soul, but that theory is outdated. Now they have another theory that, okay, there is such a thing as consciousness, but it develops at a particular stage of the matter's development. And what they do nowadays, we all know about such things as artificial intelligence and things like this. Those are basically pursuits by the modern scientists to create life. If they can't do it chemically, then maybe they can do it on the level of software, and proven this way that life can be generated just by interaction of zeros and ones, just by interaction of digits in an appliance, in a computer. But the problem is still someone has to create the artificial intelligence, someone has to program it and give it its functions. So this is why Srila Prabhupada says there that it's much easier to believe on the authority of Shri Krishna that there is such a thing as a spirit soul, which is anti-material, means it cannot be really perceived by material senses. We can only see the secondary features of the soul. When the soul is present, then body moves, body works. So this means that if we want to save our time, and anyone who wants to save their time for the research work to understand the truth, they first of all have to accept on the basis of Shri Krishna's authority that there is a spirit soul and there is super soul. And many scientists, many researchers actually came to this conclusion in the past. Let's say Albert Einstein, if I hope I pronounce his name correctly, Albert Einstein, right? That was his. So at the end of his life, he came to the conclusion that such a big and complex universe couldn't be created by anyone or anything else but God. So he came to this understanding, and they quickly proclaimed him that he's out of his mind, and they retire him. And but Albert Einstein was fortunate enough to read Bhagavad-Gita. And not only Albert Einstein, but many other great personalities in the history, they read Srimad Bhagavad-Gita and they came to the same conclusion. And if we don't accept the conclusions of Bhagavad-Gita, then there are so many questions without answers. There are so many things we can't really explain. Like, let's say I have 2 children and both of them boys, and I love them. I love both of them. Let's say I love both of them equally, and I give them equal opportunities and equal education. And one of them grows up and suppose becomes a successful professional in the field, and another one isn't that successful and he becomes a criminal and he goes to prison. So then the question is, if inputs were the same, then why my experiment brought up different results? Let's say if in a laboratory I put together oxygen and hydrogen, then I get water, right? So if I put them together and I apply some fire in a controlled environment, so then I get a boom, and I'll get some water. So then why amongst my 2 sons, one became a successful professional and another one is a criminal? Why? Inputs were the same, so they grew up in my family. I gave them the same education. I love them equally. So why they have a different destiny? So that's another term. So if we accept the existence of soul, then next comes karma, destiny, the living being's destiny. If I accept that there is such a thing as a living entity or spirit soul, and the living entity is anti-material and the matter is temporary, and matter constantly matter undergoes constant transformation, then I have to accept that the soul, being anti-material, is not changeable, like Bhagavad-Gita says about this, is not changeable and is eternal. So then the next point I should recognize is there is such a thing as karma, and many people nowadays, they understand that there is such a thing as karma, and there are many jokes about this, about karma, as much as about reincarnation, and like it's not uncommon to see such a joke that, okay, see you next life, like this. So people recognize reincarnation, people recognize karma. So this is the only explanation why amongst my 2 children, one is so advanced and so nice, and another one is a criminal. And the only explanation is they have a different destiny. They have been programmed by their destiny in different ways. So that's the next item, living entity, karma. Then even the superior force than the living entity, and karma. The living entity's karma is kala, which is time, which is the force which moves everything in this universe. Kala is the representative of the Supreme Lord in this material world. Everything is controlled by time, etc., etc. So in this way, we can understand that all the truths described in the Srimad Bhagavad-Gita can be found right here, right in this physical world. We just have to have the proper eyes to see that. And Krishna tells Arjuna that one who dwells in the body can never be slain. So please don't worry about your relatives being killed. They will get better chances in their next life. And there is no need to grieve for any living being. So basically, Krishna was trying to elevate Arjuna's consciousness, which was externally trapped in illusion by the Lord's will, as Srila Prabhupada describes. He tried elevating his consciousness up to the spiritual level, and the main purpose was to abide by the will of the Lord. So that's basically the main purpose of any religion, any religious system, is to abide by the laws given by the Lord. So the Supreme Lord has a particular mission for us, His children, and His will is described in the Holy Scriptures, such as Srimad Bhagavad-Gita and others. And there is a system of dissemination or distribution of this transcendental knowledge. In any religion, there is a system, and in Vedic system we have guru-disciple relationships. So, what basically the disciple's position is, he has some questions, he has some desires, some aspirations in his heart, something connected to the spiritual life. And usually such a thing appears when a pious person is put into a difficult situation. As we know, 4 types of persons come to Krishna consciousness. Those who are distressed, those who are in need of money, those who are inquisitive, and those who search for the supreme absolute truth. So somehow or other, when one of those pious persons is in a particular set of circumstances and the time is ripe, he starts inquiring into the absolute truth, and at this time he should find a bona fide spiritual master. He should come into contact with devotees, at least for his further development. And as I mentioned before, those people who are fit to guide us in the spiritual science, they can be of 2 types, and that is Jnani and Tattvadarshi. Those who have Shastric knowledge, and when we just joined ISKCON, devotees who surrounded us, they gave us some, they preached to us, they gave us some knowledge, some understanding, and then any devotee should understand that when someone comes for us for instruction, we should always refer them to a highest authority, to a higher authority, to give them whatever we can give, whatever is in our power, and then we should refer them to a higher authority. In this way, devotees who preached to us then invited us for a class, for a lecture, and then our spiritual master came to our town, and there was a program, and we attended this, and so like a possible scenario could be like this. So, and in this case, in Arjuna's case, Shri Krishna is the highest authority, and he's the spiritual master of Arjuna. And he's not just Jnani or Tattvadarshi, but he's the Tattva himself, he's the Parabrahman. And later on in Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, Arjuna will, in his prayers, Arjuna will recognize the same. Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, etc. So Arjuna will tell Krishna that I understand you are the supreme absolute truth, you are the purest. So he will accept the supreme authority of the Lord. There was no superior authority at that time. The superior authority was right in front of Arjuna, speaking Bhagavad-Gita to him. So in this way, Arjuna, as Srila Prabhupada says, he became the first chain in our parampara, because in this way the knowledge of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita was disseminated in this world. And as we know, even historically, like I am from Russia, and sometimes people wonder, okay, why there are so many devotees in Russia? Like if we take the total population of Russia, the total population of Russia is equal to the total population of, let's say, Punjab in India. Like if I heard it right, in the population of Punjab is 130 million people, and that's approximately the population of Russia, 130 million people, 140 million people. But of course, we got a huge territory, but it has nothing to do with our case. So still, preaching is going on in Russia, and ISKCON develops. So this all is connected, I believe, to the fact that Arjuna, the very same Arjuna who is here in Bhagavad-Gita, who hears Bhagavad-Gita from Krishna himself, he was there. He went to the north, and he was in that part of the world where Russia is located now, and he did some wonderful preaching. Although he was a kshatriya, but still he did some preaching. So we are fortunate to be the descendants of those whom Arjuna preached. So even in this sense, in the material sense of the world, of the word, Arjuna is the first chain in our parampara. So in this way, this knowledge was disseminated, and our duty is to follow in Arjuna's footsteps. What Arjuna did basically was he accepted the supreme authority of Krishna, and he said, "Okay, I surrender unto you, so I do whatever you want." And before that, Krishna described to him everything. He described that the soul doesn't have anything in common with the matter, and he described to him the supreme goal, which is to surrender unto the Supreme and being completely detached, completely free from all the material attachments. But then when Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, Krishna told him the same thing as in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavad-Gita. Okay, now Arjuna, you fight for me. Because though we may become detached from everything material, there are some persons amongst us who are detached, who are truly detached and attached to their spiritual master and Krishna. Still, we have our particular nature, our particular karma, and that is the Lord's will on us in this lifetime. And Arjuna's plan, the plan for Arjuna was that Arjuna was Kshatriya and he was supposed to fight for Krishna's sake. Same applies to any one of us. We all have our destiny and our karma, the will of the Lord for us in this lifetime, the plan of the Lord. And by serving our spiritual master, we can get a clear understanding of what is this. Basically, those devotees who are really advanced, they accept their spiritual master as their everything within the core of their hearts, and they understand that any order of the spiritual master is their destiny. They have to fulfill it. Thus they dedicate their lives fully and wholly to the service of their spiritual master. And even those of us who aren't that fortunate yet, we still know what to do, right? Because we have Srila Prabhupada's books, and we know that our first and most important duty is to complete minimum 16 rounds daily. Srila Prabhupada tells about this in the beginning of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita in his introduction, I believe. And we have to eat something, so we first of all feed our deity, or we go to the temple and after the morning program we eat the temple prasadam. And then we do some practical service as much as we can. Those who are brahmacharis or renunciants, they can dedicate themselves more fully to the service. And those who are not, those of us who are not, we have to have some work. We have to have some material activities. But because we dedicate the results of our activities to Krishna, then this is really not a material activities anymore. So and that was Arjuna's case. Arjuna's activities wasn't connected to, let's say, temple worship. He wasn't a brahmana. He wasn't a pujari. He didn't start kirtan on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. He didn't take his karatals or midanga and started. He didn't start singing. He had to fight, but because he did it for Krishna, that wasn't really material activities. Same way, oftentimes we can't do direct service, or let's put it this way, we can't do much direct service to Krishna due to circumstances, because we have to work, we have some other responsibilities. But still, main thing, what matters is what's our goal. What's the goal of our activities? What's the goal of our money making and other activities? So this is what really matters. And like in case of Arjuna, Arjuna's activities wasn't material, because they were done under the direction of the Supreme Lord and for his purpose. So same way, our activities can be spiritualized. Our life can be spiritualized if we follow in Arjuna's footsteps. Okay, I'd like to stop here, and if any questions or comments, please feel free.
Thanks. You were speaking about the destiny. So how a person can change his destiny? Just like Arjuna was a Kshatriya, so he could not change his destiny and become Brahmana and do Kirtan and other things. His destiny was Kshatriya, was to fight. So similar way, in the material world we have our different destiny, we have different programs, but how we can change our destiny? Can you explain something?
Yeah. Yes. We still have our free will, and in our karma, a few things destined, like when we were born, when we are to die, what level of education we're going to have in this life, what the level of wealth or poverty we're going to be at, and a few other things. But still, we have our free will. And as you spoke, I immediately remembered a good example. I have a good brother who serves in British Army as a special force. Like, if you look at him, you know, it takes a very close inspection to understand that he's actually a devotee. He looks like a normal commando, or what they are called. And he's got his muscles, he's got his uniform, and he had to kill many people in his life during the military operations. But main thing which matters is what he does in his free time, or what he does in his heart. In his heart, first of all, he always carries with him Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, even on the battlefield, and his bead bag. And in his free time, he chants his rounds, and he reads Srimad Bhagavad-Gita, and he does other activities like this. Yeah, so destiny is destiny, and the destiny will prevail, but main thing is what we do along the way. Like, let's say we have to take a train, and as you know, Indian trains can be difficult sometimes, not very comfortable sometimes, but so the train has to go from point A to point B, where you get down, and you can just you still have your free will. You can just go to sleep and wake up when, shortly before your station comes. Otherwise, you're gonna miss it. Or you can do something else. You can do something useful. You can chat with your friends. You can read shastras. You can hear the lectures. You can do so much stuff. So your destiny doesn't really change, because the train is going only where it was supposed to go. But you can do so many things along the way. So basically, maybe the question should be formulated not as how to change one's destiny, but how to use one's destiny in a wise way.
Can I give
Yeah.
answer of this? I will give practical. Sri Radhe. Prabhuji, I will say that you have done a karma. Who got me in 4 months, he was daily visiting me with prasad of ISKCON, and he was daily going to me. And one day he compelled me to come here in ISKCON, and I am your new devotee. So it was his karma, and it was my destiny. I am here today. According to me, it is my destiny to meet Krishna with the efforts of Prabhu. Both are important part, isn't it? According to me. Without destiny, karma is incomplete, and without karma, destiny. According to me. Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions or comments? Okay, Srimad Bhagavad-Gita ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.